Hi, I'm Sriram Lakshman with The Hindu coming to you from New York. I'm going to walk you through the 3-day visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the United States. The visit started on Saturday with a bilateral meeting between Mr. Modi and US President Joe Biden at Mr. Biden's home. The White House called this meeting a personal meeting unusually because Mr. Biden has for long emphasized that his ability to connect at a personal level with other politicians has what's fueled both his relationships with US politicians as well as his diplomacy with politicians from other countries. And on Saturday, President Biden met not just with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his home, but also with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of Australia and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida of Japan. These meetings were held individually at his home. And in the afternoon, they all met together for the Quad. The Quad, as you know, is the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. And it's a grouping of India, the US, Australia, and Japan. And this was the 6th summit level meeting, the 4th in-person meeting that was held, and it was held at Archmere Academy, also near Wilmington. It's Joe Biden's high school. In fact, the entire flavor for the day was Mr. Biden's personal connections with the other leaders, about his life, the milestones in his own life. And part of the reason for that is also this is his last Quad summit, and everyone's aware that he's demitting office in a few months. He's not seeking re-election, and in a sense it was a goodbye to him and also a thank you to him. It is under his administration that the Quad started meeting at the leader level. So from the bilateral meeting between Mr. Modi and Mr. Biden, there emerged what both governments called the joint fact sheet, and it had a very strong component on critical and emerging technologies. It was also focused on defense and energy as well. The two sides took stock of their global comprehensive and strategic partnership. They announced what was called a watershed agreement to establish a new semiconductor fabrication plant, which would be focused on power, electronics, next generation telecommunications, green energy applications, and so forth. This is a fabrication plant in India. It's significant. They also welcome progress towards the sale of 31 armed drones from General Atomics, a US defense company, to India. This is going to cost India about $4 billion. In fact, the announcement that the deal had been finalized, there was buzz that it was going to happen during the bilateral meeting, but it looks like there's still some work to be done on that. India and the US also announced joint programs in Africa on the developmental dimension, as well as in energy and in emerging digital dimensions. As you know, China has a strong and growing presence in Africa, and this is not lost on India or the United States. So something else to note about the bilateral meetings were the Indian side was represented, of course, by Mr. Modi, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, and also India's ambassador to the United States, Vinay Mohan Kwatra. On the other side, one of the people representing the United States was NSA Jake Sullivan, and India's NSA Ajit Doval was not present. And just a few days earlier, a US District Court in New York had issued a summons for several Indian citizens, including Mr. Doval, in connection with an alleged assassination plot of Khalistani separatist Gurpratwant Singh Pannu. And 2 days before the Biden-Modi meeting, several Sikh groups had met White House officials and intelligence officials. The government of India officials, the Hindu had reported, said that Mr. Doval did not travel to the United States because of the Jammu and Kashmir elections and because of other domestic issues. The main output of the Quad summit was a statement called the Wilmington Declaration. It was heavily focused on maritime security, health, communications, and critical technology. One of the announcements was joint Coast Guard exercises, very significant. The US is going to host the other 3 countries' Coast Guards next year, and then the other countries will take it in turn to host these joint exercises. The Quad Summit also announced training for the Indo-Pacific Program for Maritime Domain Awareness. This Maritime Domain Awareness Program was launched in Tokyo in 2022. India is going to host the first workshop. This is to train Indo-Pacific countries to use the latest available technology to monitor what's going on in their waters, including things like illegal fishing and so forth. But you can use your imagination. It's not just going to be for that. It's going to be used to understand who's operating in their waters and what they're doing. There was also an expansion of the Quad Fellowship, which is a program to bring STEM students to the United States. The expansion includes 50 scholarships for citizens of Indo-Pacific countries, so basically Southeast Asia, to come and study in government-run technology institutes in India. This program is worth a total of $500,000, and it will be administered by India. So the Quad joint statement this year also has strong language on China. It talks about coercive activities in the Indo-Pacific, and senior Biden administration officials, while previewing the meeting before the summit, said that the statement would contain the strongest language that Quad summits have so far used, not just on China but also on North Korea. So the Quad countries expressed, quote, serious concern about the militarization of disputed features and coercive and intimidating maneuvers, unquote, in the South China Sea. So that's pretty strong language. One of the other messages from the weekend was that the Quad is here to stay, so the durability of the Quad. US officials were also keen to get that message across because President Biden is retiring, and if you recall, his predecessor, US President Donald Trump, the Republican president, he actually had elevated the Quad during his presidency from the US perspective to the foreign minister level. And President Biden held the first leaders level meeting. So, so much investment is going on, both in terms of depth and breadth. So there was keenness from the US to signal that there is going to be continuity across administrations. On the health front, the Quad Cancer Moonshot was announced. This is a program to vaccinate and treat people for cervical cancer, and involves contributions from all 4 Quad governments. The Sriram Institute of India, in partnership with Gavi, will support orders of up to 40 million HPV vaccines, subject to necessary approvals, for countries in the Indo-Pacific. The Cancer Moonshot is a project close to President Biden's heart. He lost his son to cancer in 2015. So a lot of programs have been announced, and you've seen in the past some of these have run into trouble, like the COVID vaccine program, for example. So we really need to wait and watch and see how these announcements are implemented. So that was a very hectic Saturday, not just for the Prime Minister and his team, but also for the media. There was a 12:30 a.m. briefing on Sunday morning in Manhattan, and then the next day's events were in Long Island, which is further away. The main event for Sunday was the community event at the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. These community events are a standard feature of Mr. Modi's trips abroad. There were some standard elements and some things that stood out from Sunday's event, which was called Modi and US. Firstly, the BJP and the NDA's majority in the Lok Sabha elections was significantly reduced. However, if you did not know this fact and you went to the event on Sunday, you couldn't have guessed that that was the situation, because Mr. Modi's speech was like an election victory speech. And he, for example, rhetorically asked the crowd about the elections that occurred. The results were announced in June. Kya hua hai? What happened? Kya hua hai? Kya hua hai? 3 times. And the crowd got very excited, and about the outcome he said ab ki baar, and the crowd responded by saying Modi Sarkar. Ab ki baar, he repeatedly says it. So he was really in that sense, the crowd was reacting to him, and he was connecting with the crowd. Something to keep in mind about these rallies that Mr. Modi holds is, in statistics, it's called sample self-selection. So you go to a Modi rally, of course, you're likely to see that the most committed Modi fans are present over there. And certainly he has many supporters in the diaspora. But the picture is more nuanced than that. Than the picture that you get at a rally, because you have to look at the larger diaspora, you have to look at support across different demographics within the diaspora, and most crucially, you have to look at support amongst those Indian Americans who have immigrated in their lifetimes or not too long ago to America versus those who are first, second, third generation Indian Americans. So this is something to note. I also noticed that I interviewed some people outside the arena, and there were quite a few who did not want to get into US politics. But of those who offered an opinion, pretty much everyone told me that they were Trump supporters.
पहले भारत सबसे समान दूरी की नीति पर चलता था, इक्वल डिस्टेंस। अब भारत सबसे समान नजदीकी की नीति पर चल रहा है।
Point number 2 is the Indian diaspora has been highly successful across many fields. There's no question about this. Business and industry, academia, and now increasingly politics. They've also been a significant force multiplier in the US-India relationship. And Mr. Modi has understood the diaspora's power and influence very well. And he connects strongly with sections of the diaspora that are open to him, and whenever there's an opportunity. And he did this again on Sunday. He praised the diaspora repeatedly, and they responded to him. Finally, he talked about India being a youthful country, an aspirational country. This is something he says in all his speeches abroad, many of them rather. The successes across domains over the last 10 years. I've heard him talking about this at other rallies as well. And one thing he did on Sunday, which I've seen him do before as well, was to draw a difference between the last 10 years when his government first came to power in 2014 and the time before that. So he paints a binary picture of India and India in the world, with 2014 as the watershed moment. And the times before that are portrayed in unflattering light, both explicitly and by implication. This is politics, and he was very much engaged in it on Sunday. So after the community event on Sunday evening and Monday, the Prime Minister held bilateral meetings and delivered a short address at the UN Summit of the Future. His interactions included bilaterals with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, the leaders of Kuwait, Vietnam, and most significantly, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. Mr. Modi was in Kiev at the end of August, you may recall this, and since then he has spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Mr. Biden as well. NSA Doval also had been to Moscow and spoke with Vladimir Putin. During the Modi-Zelensky meeting, the war was discussed, of course, as was the bilateral India-Ukraine relationship. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that India was passing information between Russia and Ukraine with a view to speeding up a return to peace between those two countries. And Mr. Jaishankar also said that the sense was that both Russia and Ukraine appreciated that India was doing this. That's it from me for now. Thanks for tuning in.